Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomed China's willingness to play a constructive role in Ukraine, ahead of Xi Jinping's arrival to Moscow. In an article written for the China People's Daily newspaper on Monday, Vladimir Putin said the Kremlin had high hopes for the Chinese president's visit. The visit was Xi Jinping's first visit to Russia since Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine last year. Putin called Xi Jinping his good old friend. "We thank China's balance with respect to the events that took place in Ukraine, for understanding its true background and causes," Putin said. "We welcome China's willingness to play a constructive role in resolving the crisis." Earlier in a letter, Xi Jinping called for a rational path to emerge from the crisis, saying China's proposal reflected a global outlook. Last February, China published a 12-point proposal calling for dialogue and a settlement of the problem in Ukraine. However, the proposal contained only general statements and no concrete proposals for how the year-long war would end. On the other hand, Ukraine says a settlement of any kind would require Russia to withdraw from all territory it has annexed, including the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia annexed in 2014. Citing The Guardian, Xi Jinping said his trip to Russia aims to strengthen friendship between the two countries, comprehensive partnership and strategic interaction, in a world threatened by acts of hegemony, despotism and bullying. "There is no universal model of government and no world order in which the decisive word belongs to one country," Xi wrote. Expert opinion analysts say Xi's visit is important for Moscow. "China is by far Russia's most important ally," said Alexander Gabuev, an expert on Russia-China relations at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. That Xi, the leader of the world's second most powerful nation, was ready to visit Moscow during the war in Ukraine is very symbolic. Xi Jinping is visiting amid Russia's increasing dependence on China. He has outdone Putin by a year in the war in Ukraine, experts say. There was already a major power imbalance before the war. Now, with Russia's isolation from the West, that power asymmetry is on steroids, said Gabuev. China has all the clout it could want, and it will only increase going forward. Gabuev referred to Russia's growing economic dependence on Beijing. China now accounts for more than 40% of Russia's total imports, according to the country's trade dates. Data shows China has stepped in to supply Russia with a large number of products for civilian and military use, including raw materials and computer chips, a vital resource for Moscow to keep its war machine afloat. China's imports of Russian oil increased 8% last year. Russian gas imports increased by 50% according to Gazprom, Russia's top producer. This shift partly explains why the Russian economy fared better than many economists had expected after the unprecedented imposition of Western sanctions on the country. But while Moscow managed to divert some of its trade flows to China, the country's budget posted a nearly $25 billion deficit in January after the West introduced a series of price curbs and embargoes on Russian energy exports, the lifeblood of the Russian economy. For Russia, it will be very important to discuss increasing sales of oil and gas and resuming the flow of important components, said Gabuev. When Xi Jinping lands in Moscow on Monday, he too will be well aware of the stakes of his visit. The visit will be widely interpreted as a show of support for Putin and the man Xi describes as his best friend. But Xi Jinping also wants to show the world he can be a restraining force for Putin, for example by preventing him from deploying nuclear weapons on the battlefield in Ukraine. Xi Jinping is also reportedly planning a phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The plan will partly be an attempt to balance the negative impact of his visit to Moscow, said Bonnie Glaser, director of the Indo-Pacific program at the German Marshall Fund. Xi is trying to play the role of a global statesman. On Monday last week, he called for China to play a bigger role in managing global affairs, after brokering a deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran to restore diplomatic ties. The move is seen by China itself as a victory against U.S. influence in the Middle East. Xi Jinping said China would bring positive energy to world peace and development. Wagner's boss reveals plans to recruit 30,000 new mercenaries. Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is a mercenary boss, claims that his party is currently recruiting 30,000 new troops to strengthen the Wagner Group's defense base on the battlefield. This statement was made by Prigozhin via an audio message on his Telegram account. He explained that the recruitment had been opened by the Russian government last week. Later, as many as 500 to 800 people from 42 cities in Russia will be sent to Ukrainian territory starting in mid-May 2023. By mid-May, we plan to increase the number of fighters in our unit by about 30,000, Prigozhin explained, quoted from the Kyiv Independent. Prior to recruitment, Prigozhin himself had been conducting an active campaign for months on behalf of Russian citizens interested in joining the Wagner Army's offensive program in the Ukrainian border region. This step was taken to prevent the defeat of Wagner's troops on the battlefield, bearing in mind that during the last few months Prigozhin's army had suffered heavy losses when they captured the Ukrainian town of Bakhmut. The heat from the Ukrainian cannon and missile attacks left only about 10,000 Wagner troops still on the front line. This number is far from the total troops owned by the Wagner Group in January, where the United States estimates that by early 2023, there are at least around 50,000 members in Ukraine, including 40,000 prisoners Prigozhin recruited from Russian prisons with the promise of amnesty if they survive for 6 months. Wagner's setback meant that the longest and bloodiest battle of the war began because Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu committed treason by preventing the mercenaries from obtaining ammunition and weapon supplies, Prigozhin explained. The impact of this setback has even sparked doubts by the Russian people about the ability of troop commanders on the battlefield. Even though he was being hit by various negative issues, this did not diminish Prigozhin's optimism. The Wagner Group boss believes his troops can regain control of Ukrainian territory after a massive recruitment drive. Russian Su-27 jet pilot wins award after crashing US MQ-9 Reaper drone in Black Sea. 2 Russian Su-27 fighter jet pilots received an award for successfully ramming the US MQ-9 Reaper drone in the Black Sea last Tuesday. Russia's Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu, honored the 2 pilots on Friday. Sergei Shoigu repeated the Russian version of the chronology of the collision of Russian fighter jets and US drones in the Black Sea. As a result of a sharp maneuver, the MQ-9 drone flew out of control with a loss of altitude and collided with the surface of the water, a press release shared on the Telegram channel of the Russian Ministry of Defense, quoted by the New York Post. The Russian fighters did not use airborne weapons, did not make contact with the unmanned aerial vehicles and returned safely to their airbases, the statement continued. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the drone was flying with its transponder turned off. The US MQ-9 drone was also deemed to have violated Russian announced airspace restrictions in connection with the invasion of Ukraine. After this incident, the Russian side planned to retrieve the wreckage of the US drone that crashed in the Black Sea. Meanwhile, the US said no critical information could be recovered from the drone. On Thursday, the US released a video it claimed was footage of the incident before a Russian fighter jet rammed a US drone. The video has been edited to be 42 seconds long, but remains in the same order as events. It can be seen that US fighter jets are near US drones. The video does not show the Russian jet hitting the drone, but succeeding in cutting through the drone's propellers. It's very clear when you look at the video that the fighter jet hit our drone, White House spokesman John Kirby told reporters Thursday. Russia questions US drones in Black Sea. Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, asked the United States to stop flights around the borders of Russia and Ukraine. Anatoly Antonov wonders why US drones have to carry out these activities every day in the Black Sea area near the Russian border, even though these activities are far from their own country, the United States. We are well aware of the missions used for reconnaissance and drone strikes, Anatoly Antonov told reporters on Wednesday, quoted by Sputnik. According to National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications John Kirby, US UAVs make these kinds of cross-flights every day, said Anatoly Antonov. What are they doing thousands of miles away from the United States? The answer is obvious, he continued. He believes the US MQ-9 Reaper drone is tasked with gathering information that can be used to assist Ukraine in an attempt to attack Russia's military and territory.